American Tungsten is a tungsten explorer and developer focused on rehabilitating the IMA mine in Idaho and has expanded its land position with 113 federal claims covering 2,000 acres. CEO Ali Haji is here to outline the story and the upcoming milestones. I'm Martin Gago with Market Radius Research. Please remember this is neither a recommendation nor investment advice. We're here to learn about the company. Ali, great to see you. You've had a very busy summer with all the work going on at American Tungsten.
We have done. Thank you, Martin. It's been a busy summer, and I think the press releases that we've put out as a company are hopefully highlighting that effort. So appreciate everybody that's dialing in today. And without further ado, I believe there may be some of you that are familiar with the story, and the rest of you that might be new to the story. We'll walk through the story as Martin highlighted, and then we'd be happy to take questions at the end. So American Tungsten, rightly American focused in Idaho to advance the IMA mine, which was a past producer. We're trading on the CSE under ticker TUNG, on the OTCQB under ticker TUNGF, and over in Frankfurt under ticker RK9. I will be making forward-looking statements, so please keep that in mind. The investment highlights for the company, tungsten is a lesser known critical metal, but of course one that is gaining a lot of interest, not only by various government agencies, but industrial interest as well. The reason for that, China, much like everything else that is critical, has been supplying 85% of this very critical metal. Tungsten is the hardest metal on the periodic table, softer only than diamond, has a melting point of 2,500 degrees centigrade, and as such is used to strengthen alloys. It's used for industrial purposes and importantly for armor and ammunition, given its tensile strength. China, about 2 years ago, decided that they would start to restrict the export of tungsten to nations that it deemed non-friendly. As a result, the price of tungsten today is at about 14-year highs, and it is imperative that the nations of the West, or those that we consider allies, start to bring back their production capacity. And IMA, being a past producer with various amounts of capital having been spent on it, in our view, will be the first to bring tungsten production back online in North America, commencing in Idaho. We sit on a private patented land package. What that means is we are not at the behest of the federal agencies that would require permitting. We simply need state level permitting. We are also sitting on a very high grade at about 0.63%, second highest in North America, amongst the top 5 highest grades in the world, allowing us to bring a DSO model online here quite quickly and cheaply. And the intent with our production profile is to be able to supply, at a very minimum, 8% of the United States tungsten requirement. We've got infrastructure very close to site. We've got paved roads leading up right to the entrance of our mine site. We have low-cost power grid on site as well. And we have water supply rights through the Patterson Creek that runs between our 2 valleys. And I'll show you those images in a second.
Ali,
yes, go ahead.
You mentioned DSO. Could you just clarify that term?
DSO is the direct shipment of ore. So we're not beneficiating. We're not doing anything special to what we mine out. We will simply be shipping it off for processing at 0.63, which is very high grade to begin with, but also with 2 ounce per ton silver and 0.15% moly. The credits we receive for the silver and moly offset our OPEX quite significantly to allow us to be profitable. So we're located in Idaho, and we'll cover a bit of where we sit in a second, but ultimately we are in a moly porphyry system that runs across northern Idaho. The differentiator for IMA is the fact that we have high-grade tungsten veins running through the system, alongside some very high-grade silver as well. Given it is a strategic metal, we are, of course, engaged with various government agencies. The Department of Defense has had a white paper from us since January. We have added some individuals to the board that I'll touch on later, but we are now engaged with other government agencies to unlock non-dilutive capital. We're also speaking with Exim Bank for a debt component that, of course, would be at a low interest rate and allows us to progress to production. The team has been enhanced, I should say, over the last 2.5 months, maybe 3 months, since we brought on some very critical individuals. Collectively, we have 150 years experience of either running public or private mining companies, a few assets brought to production, and a significant amount of capital raised across the management team. Our key technical team comprises of Austin Zinser. He's down in Boise, Idaho. He's our VP Exploration. He's seen Perpetua go from greenfield to construction and ultimate production, a multi-billion-dollar company. We have Dave Sabarin, who's our VP Mining Operations. A lot of success building underground operations in the past. And again, we will touch on the other members of the team that provide governance and oversight to the tune of perhaps a $100 million company relative to our 40 million market cap here today. So we talked about tungsten. Its uses primarily defense with armor and armor-piercing applications. It's used in technology circuitry, aerospace. Given the hardness of tungsten, you cannot have a commercial airline fly without it. Each of those turbines contains tungsten. Wind turbines, and thanks to its very high melting point, nuclear energy as well. So China does have a fair bit of the global tungsten reserve, but it does exist in nations that are considered more friendly, and that accounts for about 34% of the global product or resource, I should say. In terms of mining and refining, China leads the charge there, and with that export restriction in place, it's imperative that we start to bring more supply online. The market is continuing to grow, so $6.8 billion market today in 2025. In 2030, the expectation that it's about $10.2 billion. And that's driven by a number of things. One, you've got NATO spending 5% of their GDP on defense applications. You have the developing nations now advancing their local infrastructure, but also their own military uses. And with the increase of our dependence in technology, tungsten does play a very critical part in the infrastructure necessary for us to move to that artificial intelligent world that we seem to be heading towards. So demand is not slowing down. Production needs to come online. And with the restrictions in place in China, looking outside of China, of course, is imperative. And with IMA, as I mentioned, our goal is to be the first producer in North America. Our asset is about 2.5 hours northeast of Boise, Idaho, up in the Lemhi Range. We have a couple other players in that jurisdiction that I will cover in a second. But we have a couple of advantages relative to some of the other projects that we're seeing in Nevada or what have you. One, of course, being it is patented land, so permitting is an easy process, very high grade, so we're able to leverage that DSO model and come online to start to generate revenue. But importantly, this being a past producing jurisdiction or region, you've got the infrastructure in place in the shape of mills that are able to process the ore that we start to produce. So we've got two mills within 180 or 200 miles, depending on which mill you look at, from our mine site that have processed similar material. In terms of transportation, it's about 18 miles via truck and then 180 miles or so via rail. So very cheap in terms of transporting this very high grade product. And we will start to announce some definitive agreements with those mills once they are in place in the coming months. So the infrastructure is in place with respect to who will be processing. We have our mining plan being developed now, and we are also speaking with offtake partners in the United States that would be acquiring our product. This is where we sit in the Idaho Porphyry system. We've got Thompson Creek's Moly mine that is now restarting operations. That's an open pit, about 60 miles as the crow flies from our project. We've got other projects within us that have a bit of gold scattered in there, but really a prolific mining jurisdiction with a lot of major players and lots of townships that have had mining experience. In fact, it just so happens that the contractor working on rehabilitating our portal today, his grandfather worked at IMA when it was in production back in the late 50s. So the fact that we've had groups such as Inspiration, which is a subsidiary of Anglo, Gentor and Bradley work on the project until as recently as 2010. We are in a very arid region, so we don't have weathering issues. And the infrastructure is in fantastic shape. Our goal is to start to crystallize the opportunity around the existing resource, bring that to production, continue through exploration to grow our resource and increase the life of mine. And given our proximity to that infrastructure and labor, we believe we can do so quite quickly. A bit of background about the actual mine. 1880 is when Bradley went in there, being made it the fourth largest producer of tungsten. They drilled a fair bit, and in around 1970, they stopped work on the project, and that was around the time that the Second World War Act ended, so tungsten wasn't very much in favor, so to speak. 79 to 82, the Korean Act was put in place, and tungsten became a requirement again. 12,000 feet drilled by Inspiration, which was a subsidiary of Anglo American. 2008, 2010, a company named Gentor decided to option and mine the molybdenum, not so much focused on the tungsten. But they drilled 25,000 feet. So we've got a lot of data to work off of that will do two things. One, allow us to delineate and de-risk the historical data to come up with an updated 43101 compliant resource, but of course increase the resource potential to increase the life of mine on the project. So in 2024, American Tungsten optioned the IMA mine from a group. The option payments, for those that are curious, 5.8 million US over 8 years. Balloon payments in year 7 and 8. There is a 2% NSR that is held by the optioners. We have the option to acquire 1% of that NSR for $1 million before the 4th-year anniversary. So, of course, we intend to do that here as soon as we are generating cash flow in the next 12 to 18 months. So our goal today is let's define that resource, let's drill it and delineate it. Let's make sure we're increasing the resource potential and we're able to advance the project to a stage where we're funding it primarily through non-dilutive capital sources. The followers of this story and other critical metals may have seen the likes of Guardian Metals, CSON in New Brunswick, TUNG in the Northwest Territories, all received capital from the DoD or DOE over the last year. And our expectation, given our path to production and the fact that we would be covering at a very minimum 8% of US production or consumption of tungsten, we are fairly confident that we will be awarded non-dilutive funding from one of the government agencies we are speaking with. This image just shows you the land package. I think it's important for you to understand as we progress things. The image on the right is the zero-level portal rehabilitation, essentially where we will start to drive in equipment, both from a drilling perspective and an infrastructure perspective for water, air, and power. The gap in between these two red zones is the Patterson Creek that runs between the two projects or the two valley systems, and that's where we will get our water. But importantly, this area here is all flat land that's about southwest of our project. And if we were to beneficiate, put a mill on site, an X-ray ore sorter, dry stack some tailings perhaps, or even build a camp for the operators, we've got plenty of land to do so. So we've really got a fantastic land package that allows us to grow as the resource grows.
Can you clarify on that map, the green and the sort of the pinkish red areas? What are those two different, signify those two different colors?
The green are called the Mazda claims, and the pink is the IMA claims. So it's just the naming as to what those claims are called.
Okay.
Another key advantage relative to our peers, such as TUNG, that you might be familiar with. TUNG was North American Tungsten Corp. It was the largest producer of tungsten in North America up until about 2015, when everybody went belly up because the Chinese flooded the market with cheap tungsten. The image on the right shows you a cross-section of our adits. The important aspect here is that each and every one of our adits is above the water table. And what that means is we have no discharge from our adit system. As I mentioned earlier, being in Idaho, which is an arid jurisdiction, we've got adits that have not been weathered in any way, shape, or form, and in fact are in great shape. I managed to walk the entirety of the D-level adit about 9 weeks ago. Our goal today with the rehabilitation of the portals ensures safe entry for our team. Once we are in there, we will be doing drilling, fan drilling at the very least 6,000 feet to validate the historical resource, update the resource statement to the market, and again, to try and increase our potential resource so we have a longer life of mine. The fact that we are above the water table and have no discharge means our permitting requirements are very, very minimal. In fact, the MSHA application process has begun, and that's really a health and safety piece that we have to get over the line. Expectation is that gets completed here in the next week or two, and then we can crack on with planning for our drilling, which is anticipated to start in early to mid-October. One thing I would like to touch on the south side of the valley, which is this area here. There were a couple of really good holes put in by the prior operators. Their focus was primarily on the northern side of the valley, and that's where we will start our production. But having walked that side of the valley about 9 weeks ago, as I said, we saw veins that were exposed on surface that were about 30 feet wide. So there's a lot of potential for us to increase the resource on the other side of the valley. And of course, we will start to do so once we are generating cash flow. Here's some of the historical results. That's the Patterson Creek that I mentioned. This is the south side of the valley that has had a couple of holes with great intercepts. But of course, having walked through it, we think there's a lot more there. And so we will start to explore that further once we are generating revenue. Historical resource by Bradley is about 350,000 tons. That is graded at about 0.5. Inspiration then drilled a further 12,000 feet, I beg your pardon. And they were able to come up with about 1 million highly probable material at 0.63 with that 0.04 moly and 1.79 ounces of silver per ton. There's an additional 419,000 tons of possible ore, and our goal with this exploration program is to, of course, help quantify that to JORC or 4311 compliant standards, and then start to develop our development plan on the basis of that resource. Gentor was primarily focused on the moly, as I mentioned before, at 0.15. We're higher than average grade around the world, and moly is also a critical metal that is starting to gain a lot of appreciation in its pricing. The fact that the mills we're working with or looking to work with have the ability to extract the silver and the moly equates to about $100 US in credits that, as I said, would offset our OPEX. So internal PEA estimates are showing very profitable values. Of course, we have not shared that with market, and we cannot do so until it has been vetted by a third party. But the internal economics are showing a high profit margin, and they are based, I should say, on a price of 380 per ton for tungsten, whereas tungsten today is on the cusp of breaking 500 US per ton. So in summary, it's a favorable jurisdiction. We're very happy to be in Idaho. We've had conversations with the congressman's office there, the senator's office there. We're hoping for them to put in some sort of earmarked funding as we start to advance. We've got a very high-grade system that we look to commence production on. The underground drilling that we're expecting over the next sort of 2 to 3 months here is anywhere between 6,000 and 10,000 feet. And we've got a skilled local workforce that is currently working on site to rehab, and will be doing the drilling as well. And then, of course, that option to ship to our mill sites in northern Idaho and Montana. Those agreements are being ratified, and as soon as they are ready to share with market, we will do so. Remediation has gone at an incredible pace. We're very happy with the work that's being done. Those images were shared, and there's some in the appendix following these slides. Once that's in place, we start do that drilling, and of course continue the conversations with the various government agencies as well as our offtake partners. We have a fair number of new shareholders that we brought into the financing, and I'll cover that when we touch on the cap table. But the expectation here is, let's move this to a more institutional holding pattern as opposed to the massive retail pattern that we have today. And everybody loves retail because that, of course, has given us the liquidity that a lot of our shareholders like to see. But I think it's time that we look at more strategic capital pouring into the company. A bit about the team. Some of you may be familiar with who I am, but I've had 20 years of experience in the investment management space and the mining and metal space for the last 8 years. I was an advisor to Step Gold, a gold producer in Mongolia. I was also chief executive and director of lithium-ion energy that in March of this year signed a JV agreement with an Asian group to bring an asset to production at the bottom of the lithium cycle. In that process, I was also exploring some rare earth opportunities in the United States. And when American Tungsten was brought to me, I knew I could bring value by adding the right people on the team and ultimately advancing things as we go along. Murray Nye, current president of the company, he acquired the IMA option for the company, an individual that has built other underground operations in the United States. So very happy to have him and his skill set with us. Dennis Logan, a very seasoned CFO that we brought on about a month ago, was the prior CFO of Almonty Industries, which in today's world is the #1 tungsten company on the planet, about $1.6 billion market cap with their operation being planned in Shandong in Korea. Recently raised about 90 million US to uplist on the NASDAQ. He was also a banker at Desjardins, Westwind, CIBC, and TD. So really happy to have Dennis on the team. Austin, I spoke about earlier, our very prominent technical individual that's based in Boise, part of Perpetua from greenfield exploration to resource and ultimate development plans that we're now seeing in place for Perpetua at about $2 billion market cap. The next two individuals I brought on to the team as soon as I was named CEO. Dan Nicholas is a senior consultant to EY, so essentially a consultant to a consultancy where he consults public and private companies with respect to access to non-dilutive government grants. And he's able to do so because he managed the largest investment portfolio of the Department of Energy to the tune of $40 billion before he became a consultant to EY. So Dan not only understands the government side of the house, but an ex-investment banker at Morgan Stanley and Solly and Pally, based between New York and DC, really is our key, I call it conduit or advocate when it comes to the various government agencies that we're currently engaged with. And then James Whitaker is the Chief Operating Officer of Capstone Copper, a $7 billion copper behemoth. He used to be the president of Escondida, has worked for Barrick and Oceana Gold, a very seasoned fellow that has brought various mines to production, and having his governance and oversight as we execute is rather valuable. One of the things I like to joke about is, Jim lives down in Santiago. I think there's something in the tea in Chile because he's only allowed one board seat, and he chose to join me. So very happy to have Jim, and he is an invaluable member of the team. We recently added Liam Farrell as our VP Operations. Liam has done a number of different things at various investment banks in Canada and the US. He's had experience with graphene, which is also a critical metal, as well as some technology initiatives as well. And Liam comes in to really bring the operational aspect into one sort of piece of working magnitude. So really happy to have Liam on the team. And our advisory team consists of Dave Sabarin, our VP Mining Operations. He's built other narrow vein mines across North America. And then the other four individuals you see on the screen here, including Finley, have all had tungsten experience. So it's very seldom that you find a junior that has advisors that are very, very bespoke in the sense that they understand the critical metal that we are looking to derive value from, as opposed to more on the generalist front. So really happy to have this team that oversees our activity and our trajectory going forward. In terms of our share price today, we're about $1.03. That was as of, I suppose, a couple of minutes or an hour ago. 40 million shares out today. Dilutive instruments are priced between 10 and 55 cents. The 10-cent options, the vast majority have been exercised. I think there's about 40,000 left or so. 55 cents, knowing that we did our raise at 50 cents about a month ago. Not highly dilutive, but again, a nice tight structure. The raise that we announced in July was a 50-cent raise with no warrants. Personally, I'm not a fan of warrants. I don't see them recapitalize companies. I see them being an overhang that doesn't allow you to push beyond a certain price. Fully diluted today, about 41.5 million. Insiders own about 2.5%, and we issued options as of the press release that you would have seen today. So my expectation is that insider ownership starts to grow. 7.3% from institutional investors. Pala, Terra, and Lowell were a big component of the placement that we did about a month ago. We've got two ultra high net worth individuals that control 10.5%, and they were also brought in the last financing. 79.7% with retail hands. And a key point to touch on there is that of those retail hands, we have 6,000 plus US shareholders. We are an American focused company that's currently trading on the CSE, but with the 6,000 US shareholders, the shareholder equity that we've derived from the recent placement, and our trajectory from a share price perspective, given where we're headed with the milestones that we have upcoming, we would be a natural. It would be a natural fit for us to move over to the NASDAQ or New York Stock Exchange American once we hit those thresholds. So that's the cap table in a summary. Based on our competitors or peers as a comp. We're at the bottom of the comp table here. And I think one of the key takeaways that I'd like our listeners to get here today is a lot of these mines that we're looking at are development or exploration. Some are in production, such as Group 6 and EQ Resources as well, very small production profile there. But our asset being a past producer with near-term production capacity, I think is where you start to see that torque step in once we execute upon these milestones. Do I suspect we'll be up where Almonty is? Perhaps not. Almonty is a behemoth in its own right, but I do suspect that we'll start to claw back and really start to get some torque here with respect to our valuation as we continue to grow. Just some images from site to share with you. Some of the equipment that we have: generator, bulldozer, a couple of bobcats. That's driving into the Lemhi. So that's the Lemhi range. This little gap in the valley system is the Patterson Creek that I showed you earlier. And that's the entryway into our mine. We own that side of the mountain, that side of the mountain, and all of this flat land in front of us. So we're able to put more infrastructure on site as we progress. We have a 3-bedroom house and a core shack that's on our property as well. That'll be used to station some of our staff. What you see here in the white at the bottom of the valley, that's the tailings from the past production. Not environmentally damaging whatsoever, but we will be doing some reclamation work there. The town of Chalice, Idaho, which is where we stay when we're over at site. Only about 30-minute drive from site. We've got a number of different pieces of equipment on site currently doing a fair bit of rehab work. So with that, I will pause and Martin, over to you for questions.
Ali, thank you. You covered a lot of information there. Could you, just for summary purpose and to set the stage for next questions, can you summarize the milestones you expect over the next 6 months?
Of course. In terms of the next 6 months, we've got the remediation that has commenced now. We would expect that rehab work to be done in the next sort of 4 to 6 weeks, at which point we will be deploying our drilling rigs, both at the D level and zero level, a minimum of 6,000 feet to be done there. The expectation is that we have an updated resource statement before year end. Between now and then, we expect to have a couple of things come over the line, be it a strategic investment in the company from a vertically or horizontally aligned investor, non-dilutive capital from the various government agencies, and letters of intent that formalize an offtake agreement. So that's what you can expect over the next sort of 3 to 6 months. Once that's done, we would start to look at development and ultimate building out of the operation to bring us to production in the next 12 to 18 months.
So after the drilling, you're going to be putting out a resource estimate with estimates of inferred, indicated resource.
That's correct. And the reason that would happen, or why we're pursuing that, is for two reasons. One, the historical highly probable is about 1 million ton.
Yeah.
That was not included in the 43-101 that we filed in June. We want to make that measured and indicated. We also want to grow our resource so that we're increasing our life of mine. Our current plans at 500 tons per day on 1 million ton give us a 7.5 year life of mine. We'd like to see that expanded.
Could you repeat how much annual production would that consist of?
500 tons per day would equate to 7.5 years of production,
Okay.
generating, again, don't want to talk too much about the internal
Yeah.
PEA estimates, but 7.5 year life of mine.
And this resource estimate is on the older side of things. With your drilling, how much of that will be for confirmation of historical data to make sure it's good versus stepping out and trying to find additional pounds or tons to add to the resource?
It more than likely be split about 40-60, so 40 for twinning and validation and 60 for new targets.
And this 6 to 8,000 meters, is that going to be all from within the mine, or you indicated you've got other areas around there, but you're not stepping out? It's all within the current, call it infrastructure that is at the mine.
That's right. So we'd be drilling at the D level and the zero level. Once we are in production and generating cash flow, the intent would be to drill the south side of the valley and expand our drilling either deeper or across the valley.
The steps after you have a resource estimate, would you do the traditional route of doing a PEA and all that as well, or would you try fast tracking it and sidestepping some of those reports?
I think we'd certainly do all that is required for us to be able to turn on. Of course, making a final investment decision, you want as much data available to us. Whether or not we do a PEA or PFS, the order of which has not been determined. But I think looking at the cut and fill methodology that's being employed or going to be employed at Sandong, as well as was proposed by Gentor, the prior operator, we have a pretty good handle on what we can achieve. So no comment just yet, but I do suspect one of those two pieces will be done.
It's very early yet, but given the amount, there's a significant amount of infrastructure there, are there any sort of ranges of number or ballpark number of how much CapEx or investment you would need to be put into the mine, the existing mine infrastructure there to get it to production stage?
Yeah, absolutely. That number has been shared with our listeners and various other webinars before, and that number is 20 million. So 20 million US is our guesstimate, our best guesstimate given outside consultants.
Yeah.
That would bring us to a path of 500 tons per day. We are working with other groups in the mining sphere, without naming names. It could be a DRA, a WSP, or SRK, and they will be putting together some flow sheets here for us in the next little while that will also give us some validation on those CapEx numbers for the DSO model. But excuse me, but they're also looking to price in any sort of beneficiation that we might want to undertake. So we'll have a full range of potential CapEx depending on what the end product is.
Because you could do a little bit of beneficiation at site, and that would reduce transport costs a lot, I would think. There could be a good
Absolutely.
payback on that.
Yeah, so there's a company by the name of Tungsten that recently sold to US Antimony. They're up in Sudbury, also a tungsten mine. They had some success with an X-ray ore sorting system where they were able to bring their grade from about 0.43 to zero point 0.8. Our grade being at 0.63, if we're able to bring it up to about 1 to 1.2%, that would change the economics of transportation quite significantly. So we
All
are
right.
we are also looking at X-ray ore sorting.
Tungsten itself, possibly because it is such a hard metal, and you've talked about bringing on tungsten experienced experts onto the team. Can you highlight or just dig into a little bit? What are some of the, it seems to be a unique set of knowledge. It's not just like mining copper or gold or anything like that. What are some of the aspects of tungsten that make it a little more tricky to or different than sort of larger commodity mining?
Sure, tungsten, pardon the pun, it is a hard metal to
Yeah,
bring to production. But it is one that, given the skill set that we've assembled, we are quite confident we'll be able to achieve. And the fact that the mills that we're looking to engage have processed similar material in the past, so they have the flow sheets and have tested the metallurgy, is really
yeah.
where we have an advantage. So the team that, in terms of highlighting a key individual here, Finley Baker, bar none, would be an individual that actually worked for Fostung with their X-ray ore sorting technology and sits on the board of some of the companies that are exploring for tungsten. But he was at Cantung, which was the largest operator or largest producer of tungsten. So we have him. Dave as well on the engineering side of the vein system that we're looking to bring online. And then of those other named, one of the three companies that I named before, DRA, SRK, or WSP, they've got significant experience in the space. And the one organization that we're working with today is in the midst of putting together a flow sheet for us. So this is a past producer. Yes, technology has changed and mining methods have changed, but in my view, they've only gotten better. And the fact that we have past producing ore from IMA, the expectation is that flow sheet should be rather achievable.
I would think, yeah, it's past producing, so they've been able to make it work previously.
Mhm.
So with the advances, you seem to be a slam dunk that it should be able to move
Mhm.
forward as well. Can you talk about the permitting process? And I guess before that, um, your path to production, let's say in a good case scenario where everything goes reasonably well, how long could you see yourself until you get into production?
So 12 to 18 months, 12 would be the blue sky, nothing goes wrong, and
Yeah.
we're firing things up in about a year's time. 18 months would be a more conservative estimate, but of course, we plan to bring it online anywhere between that 12 and 18 months.
Gotcha. And could you highlight, you indicated that the permitting process was very straightforward. Does it have historic mining permits that you're able
Mhm.
to grandfather to piggyback on? Or explain, because just in a lot of places, doing anything in 12 to 18 months is pretty
No, I'm with you.
aggressive. So,
Of course. So
uh,
the permits that are in place, this is an underground mine, and that makes things a hell of a lot different than an open pit that you would then have to rehabilitate, and the permitting would take that much longer to do. So the fact that
yeah,
it is underground, it is private and patented land. What that means is we own the surface and the mineral rights below that.
yeah.
Therefore, we do not require any federal permits. The fact that we're above the water table with no discharge, there is no environmental requirement from a permitting perspective. So it is a readily permittable mine. We've spoken with the state of Idaho, the Idaho Mining Association, and some consultants in Boise and Denver that have indicated to us that permitting is minimal. We do not require federal permits. We will require MSHA permitting, which is health and safety. And as I mentioned earlier in the call, we have started that process. So state level permits will be relatively easy to get. In fact, of the exact ones that are required, we don't have a complete list yet, but the expectation from our team and our consultants is that we will have no trouble being permitted to come to a production in that timeframe I indicated.
Are you working with local community groups or indigenous groups? Are there any potential issues with that? Idaho is obviously generally a more mining friendly place where they like the
Mhm.
jobs, but um, and what work are you doing to reach out to the community to make sure they're comfortable with all the trucks driving by and that?
Sure. So, in terms of 500 tons per day, you're doing about 8 trucks a day. So it's not a hell of a lot of trucks. The fact that we're coming out from the valley entryway, which I think is in that appendix image here. So you're coming out of here, we'll have our operations down at the bottom of the valley here in the land that we own, and your trucks are going by this road for 8 to 10 times a day to carry the load. We have spoken with our neighbors that live in the area. We've had various conversations with them. We have a community relations officer, Bill Breen, that continually engages with the local community. We've mentioned, like I mentioned, we've employed people from both Chalice and soon to be Salmon, Idaho as well to work on the mine site. And that just builds goodwill with the local community to show that we are providing employment. And we're looking to ensure that the entire region benefits with us economically. There are no indigenous challenges. We are in the midst of doing something with a local fire department, which I think will aid us tremendously with not only goodwill, but assisting them with the good work that they do by providing whatever value we can. So with the community relations, we are in the midst of providing assistance to the local fire department that ultimately strengthens their ability to support us and, of course, the local community. Idaho has been a fantastic state for us to work in, and the reception we've received from the Idaho Mining Association, the Senator's office, and the Congressman's office. We're very, very happy with Idaho as a jurisdiction, and of course, the support that we're receiving.
You raised a considerable amount of money a little over a month ago. How much runway does that get you? You're obviously looking for some non-dilutive financing to come in. How much of a runway does this give you? And then I guess depends on what other money shows up. What other funds could you potentially need to raise?
So, we announced $2.5 million. That was back in the start of June. We needed 3.5 to complete our rehabilitation, our drilling program, and get to that updated resource statement. We had demand for 13 million. We ended up taking 7 million, and that 7 million keeps us very well funded up until we need the capital expenditure that would be required to bring this to production. So no intention of raising capital anytime soon. We're good until we start to break ground and come online for production. That said, we are at the mercy of the government agencies to provide that non-dilutive capital, and we're very confident that that'll come. We've asked 5 agencies for anything between 11 and $17.5 million. Our capex being 20, if we convert 2 of those agencies, we have everything we need. And if we were to convert 1 and get some debt, that's fine as well. I will say that should the right strategic come knocking on our doors, or the right critical metal or tungsten investor come knocking on our doors to say, we'd like to get you funded before you wait for the government. So long as we're doing so at a price that is not dilutive to any of our existing shareholders, it's certainly something we would consider.
There's a question here from the audience. What about your schedule to first production? And I guess just to elaborate on that, what pieces need to fall into place before you pull the trigger and say, okay, we're going to start the actual mine development and then obviously the subsequent production?
So the updated resource statement, I think, is paramount. We need to get 1 million measured and indicated before we make that final investment decision. We've also got to make sure we have a good understanding of the flow sheet, the off-taker, and the mill that will be processing our product. All of that's expected to occur here in the next 4 months. And so in 4 months or so, we will be in a position to make that decision.
Here's a longer question. I'll read it out. American Tungsten has now secured 113 federal load claims surrounding the IMA mine. Given the specificity and the scale of this acquisition, can you provide insight into whether this land package was assembled primarily to secure the historic mine footprint, or if your team believes there is a district scale potential across these parcels that could meaningfully expand the project?
So the short answer there is as we start to grow our operation and we would like some beneficiating equipment or processing equipment on site, we'd like to have that there for us. And of course, beyond that, and importantly, looking at the drilling results from the prior operators, the south side of the valley looks quite promising. There could be a potential there for additional veins or a chance for us to grow our resource. So it is, I think, to answer that question, perhaps twofold. 1, to help us grow our resource, and 2, to ensure that we have the necessary land for expansion.
And I believe you said you will not be looking on those broader territories until you start production and have the initial production plan on the historic IMA mine.
That is correct. So, generating revenue is well and good, and mining companies seldom, more recently, I think that is changing, but historically, mining companies have a resource, they mine that out and pack up and off they go. In our view, I think it would be irresponsible for us not to spend money on exploration. So we will be spending money on exploration as soon as we are generating revenue.
In terms of going out to the macro picture, you showed a slide with many other tungsten focused companies there. Is
Mhm.
there a lot of, or is there concern with a lot of sort of a wall of production coming online in the tungsten market? Almonty, obviously, with their Sangdong project, is coming
Mhm.
to production shortly. Are there any other ones that will really tip the scale in terms of supply demand?
No, no. So the expectation is that there would not be any more that come online here to really tip the scale and move the pricing in a way that would be detrimental. As I showed you through the demand curve that we're seeing, the
Yeah,
market's expected to grow to over $10 billion in the next 5 years, so doubling.
yeah,
Demand is increasing, ever increasing, and of the North American environment, if you were to touch on the APTs, there's Global Tungsten and Powders, which is run by Plansay. You have Global Tungsten, Buffalo Tungsten, essentially three APTs in North America today. The government of British Columbia is contemplating putting an APT plant in Surrey that would be to the tune of about 1.3 billion Canadian. So major initiative and push to say, we'd like to secure our future as far as tungsten is concerned. And if they were not investing so heavily in that, I think it would be a different narrative. But this also does another thing. It allows North America to set its own floor in terms of pricing. So we become
yeah.
a production center outside of China that's not dependent on these economic or political winds that blow in different directions. So my expectation is we don't have enough tungsten. That's indicated by the price. As far as
Yeah.
near-term producers, between Almonty's plans and whatever plans we have, as well as some other groups in Taiwan, as well as Korea, there are some smaller companies that are contemplating production on very small resources. It's not going to be enough to move the needle in a way that would be detrimental to operations.
Yeah. And I think with tungsten as well, given its very unique characteristics, it's not like there's big substitution risk that you can switch it with aluminum in maybe in some niche applications, but essentially to get that hardness, you just need tungsten.
Precisely. You need tungsten. The melting point is also critical at 2500 Celsius. There's nothing else that melts at temperatures that high. You could argue that titanium might be a valid option, but titanium is not cheap relative to tungsten, and it does have limitations when it comes to temperature.
I guess the converse of the high pricing there is what if China takes a different approach and which has happened before and maybe not deliberately, but let's say what's happened in the nickel markets where they flood the market with lots of tungsten to kind of kick you guys in the butt to really
Yeah.
disrupt
So,
the market.
so two responses there. One, if China were to do that, and the prices were to come down, so long as North America was to prepare a floor to ensure that we have a floor price that the government would then support us on, that
Yeah.
would alleviate any pricing concerns. And the other, from a defense or strategy perspective, if I were running the Department of Defense, building a Nimitz class submarine that requires tungsten, I would want that tungsten to come from my backyard as opposed to halfway across the world from an ex foe.
And it wouldn't surprise me as well if there was a flood of tungsten on the market that a lot of people would just pick it up and create a sort of strategic tungsten reserve for a rainy
We
day.
know a cobalt company in the last decade that was similar.
Yes. Yeah. Ali, we've covered a lot of territory.
Mhm.
I can't, have we missed anything or is there anything you'd like to highlight before we wrap things up here?
No, I would just say that, thank you for everybody that's dialing in. Appreciate your support, be you an investor or a soon-to-be investor, or just have us on your watch list. We are a team that has been executing quite rapidly with the growth of our operations, our team, and of course, capital now in the treasury executing on the ground as well. So continue to follow our story, and we hope to execute, as we've stated, production 12 to 18 months.
Ali, thank you very much. That was excellent. Congratulations on everything that's been accomplished here and hope to chat with you again in the near term as you hit some milestones and move the ball forward.
Thank you, Martin. My pleasure.
Cheers.